Before Adam ever fell, heaven was already at war. A war not fought with swords, but with light, pride, and love. A war that shaped everything you and I feel today. Have you ever wondered why pain exists in a world created by a perfect God? Why temptation feels so familiar, as if it was written deep inside our souls long before we were born? There was a time before Eden, before the first breath of man, when heaven itself trembled. The most radiant being ever created, the morning star, desired the throne of the one who made him. That moment changed eternity. It wasn't just the fall of an angel. It was the beginning of every battle between good and evil, truth and deception, light and darkness even within us. The echoes of that heavenly war still live in your choices, your fears, your longing to return to something pure. What if the story of Adam's fall was only the second chapter of a much older conflict? What if the true beginning of creation was not light, but rebellion, and redemption was God's first plan, not his backup? In this video, you will discover the hidden truth before Eden, the untold beginning of the greatest story ever written. Together, we will uncover why heaven's first war still shapes your destiny, your struggles, and your hope for restoration. And as you listen, ask yourself, if the war began before Adam, could it also end inside you? If this message stirs something in your spirit, share your thoughts in the comments. Let your heart speak, and subscribe to join those seeking the light behind creation's first secret. The earth was silent after the storm of heaven. The air was thick with sorrow, yet pregnant with promise. The stars that once sang with the sons of God now hung dimly, as if in mourning for what was lost. And in that quiet, between destruction and dawn, the voice of God moved once more, not to judge, but to heal. The world was not born in darkness. It became dark. Beneath the surface, the memory of war lingered, ashes of rebellion embedded in the soil, whispers of grief carried by the wind. Yet even in ruin, God did what he always does. He spoke light. Let there be light. Not as a command of creation, but as a declaration of mercy. The light did not erase the darkness. It revealed it. It showed the truth that even in devastation, redemption can begin. Many imagine Genesis as the first act, but what if it was the restoration after the fall of heaven's brightest star? What if God, in his unending love, decided to rebuild, to write beauty over chaos, peace over war? The 7 days that followed were not just the making of a world, but the healing of a wound. When God said, "Let there be light," it was as if he was saying, "Let hope return." When he divided the waters, it was a separation not only of sea and sky, but of sorrow and possibility. When he called forth life from the soil, he was showing every creature that new beginnings can bloom from dust. This is what grace looks like: quiet, gentle, patient. It does not erase what came before. It redeems it. The same way you rebuild your life after betrayal, heartbreak, or loss, not by pretending it never happened, but by breathing new light into the broken spaces. And then, in the tenderest act of all, God formed man, not from the stars, nor from fire like the angels, but from the earth that bore the scars of rebellion. Dust and divinity met for the first time. He shaped a creature fragile enough to need him, yet sacred enough to hold his spirit. And he called him Adam. Can you imagine that moment? The breath of God entering clay, the divine stooping low to awaken the mortal. The air shimmered with purpose. Heaven watched as the Creator entrusted this new being with the authority once held by angels. Adam was not born to rule the stars, but to tend a garden, to learn love through care, not control. And that, perhaps, was the greatest mystery. Lucifer had fallen seeking a throne. Adam was lifted by being given a task. Where pride reached upward, humility bent low. The Garden of Eden was not just a home, it was a second chance for creation to choose love over pride. Every tree, every stream, every sunrise whispered the same truth. This world was made for peace, and yet peace cannot exist without choice. God did not cage Adam within perfection. He offered him freedom. He placed the tree of knowledge in the garden not as a trap, but as a testimony that love, to be real, must be chosen. And so began the quiet watch of heaven. The angels, who once battled in blazing light, now stood as unseen witnesses, wondering, would man repeat the rebellion that once scarred the stars? Days turned into evenings golden as honey. Adam walked with God in the cool of the day. Creation hummed in harmony. But the shadows remembered, somewhere beyond the gates of Eden, the exiled Prince of Heaven waited. Lucifer, now the adversary, had watched the forming of man with burning eyes. Not with admiration, but with envy. He saw in Adam what he had lost: innocence, authority, the love of the Creator. And envy is the child of pride. It seeks not joy, but ruin. He whispered to the darkness, if I cannot rise above God, I will destroy what he loves most. And thus the serpent began his crawl toward Eden. The serpent was not just a creature, it was a vessel, a mask for bitterness. When he entered the garden, the air shifted. The trees still sang, but beneath the melody was an undertone, subtle, questioning. He slithered to the woman, for the enemy always seeks the heart before the hand. He did not roar, he reasoned. Has God really said? It was the same lie he once whispered in heaven. You can be more. The same pride, dressed in new form, gentle, persuasive, disguised as wisdom. Eve looked upon the fruit, shimmering with promise. Her breath quickened. For the first time, she felt curiosity shaded with desire, not for evil, but for understanding. The serpent smiled. That is how temptation works. It does not ask you to betray, only to doubt. And as her hand reached, heaven held its breath. When her lips touched the fruit, the echo of that first rebellion thundered through creation once more. Adam followed, not deceived, but torn between love and obedience. And in that moment, heaven's war became earth's inheritance. The stars dimmed again, not from wrath, but from sorrow. Yet even in that moment of fall, mercy moved. God did not thunder down with fury. He came walking. He did not call out, "What have you done?" He asked, "Where are you?" It was not a question of location, but of heart. God was not seeking to punish. He was seeking to restore. When Adam hid, God clothed him. When Eve wept, God promised her a redeemer. The serpent had won a battle, but not the war. For every fall in Scripture is met by a greater rise. Every exile carries the seed of return. And perhaps that's the message we all need to hear. Because the war that began before Adam still lives in us, between pride and surrender, fear and faith. We have all eaten fruit we should have left untouched. We have all hidden from the voice that loves us most. Yet still, he calls. God restores what pride destroys. He rebuilds what rebellion ruins. The same hands that shaped the stars still reach for the dust to make it new. Maybe you've felt that war, the pull between who you were and who you're meant to become. Maybe you've stood, like Adam, ashamed under the trees of your own choices. If so, remember this. Your story did not end in the garden, neither did his. From Adam's fall came a promise that one day another would come to crush the serpent's head, that through one man death entered, but through another life eternal would be born. The pattern never changed. Rebellion, fall, redemption. Heaven, earth, and every human heart follow the same rhythm. When you fail, when you break, when you fall, you are not falling away from God, but into his plan for grace. The same light that once pierced the darkness of creation still waits to shine through you. And maybe that's the lesson buried in the dust of Eden, that love does not abandon when it's betrayed. It rebuilds, patiently, tenderly, until what was lost is restored. So the story continues not in the heavens, but within you. Every act of forgiveness, every humble prayer, every moment you choose truth over pride, you are fighting the same war that began before Adam. You are proving that light still wins. Perhaps that is why God still lets us fall, not to shame us, but to teach us to rise like Him, to understand that divine love is not fragile. It is forged through fire, through loss, through the quiet decision to love again. And if you've ever felt like your life has been cast down, remember, Lucifer fell like lightning, but you are not meant to fall forever. You are meant to rise like dawn. Heaven's first war was never about power, it was about love. And the final victory will not be won by force, but by hearts that choose to return to the light. If this touched your soul, share your thoughts below. Do you believe that the first war in heaven still echoes in us today? Your comment, your story, might be the light someone else needs to remember that no matter how deep the fall, redemption is always near. The serpent had succeeded. Eden, once glowing with divine peace, now trembled beneath the weight of a broken promise. The wind no longer sang, and the leaves no longer danced. They whispered instead. Something sacred had shifted. Humanity had taken the first bite of independence, and heaven felt the echo. It wasn't just a fruit. It was the opening of a gate, a choice that echoed Lucifer's rebellion. The lie was the same. You shall be like God. The first war in heaven had now been replicated on earth. The battlefield had changed, but the weapon was still pride. Adam and Eve stood in the garden, realizing they were naked not because their bodies had changed, but because innocence had fled. The eyes that once looked upon each other with wonder now saw through the lens of shame. Fear was born that day, the fear of being seen as we are. And isn't that still true? We hide from truth the same way they hid among the trees. We wear masks, build walls, and create distractions, anything to cover the nakedness of our soul. Humanity's first sin wasn't just disobedience. It was separation, the belief that we could live without the voice that made us. When God walked into the garden that day, He didn't roar in fury. His voice was soft, almost sorrowful. "Where are you?" It was not a question of location. It was the cry of a father searching for his lost children. The tenderness of that moment is often missed. God knew where they were. He knew what they had done. Yet He called out because love does not give up when betrayed. It reaches deeper. He didn't destroy them. He covered them. The same hands that shaped their bodies now clothed their shame with garments made from sacrifice. Blood touched the soil for the first time. Redemption began in a whisper. From that moment, humanity walked out of Eden, not abandoned, but accompanied by a promise. A Redeemer would come. The serpent would bruise the heel of man, but one day the Son of Man would crush its head. The stage of history was set. Every generation would echo this promise. If you've ever lost something pure, a love, a dream, an innocence, you know what Eden feels like. The ache of what was, the longing to return. But the message of Eden is not about exile. It's about the journey home. The fall was not the end. It was the beginning of redemption. In the centuries that followed, humanity multiplied, and so did the war. Not of swords and angels, but of choices. The same whisper that led Eve astray now echoed through cities, kings, and nations. Pride dressed itself in many forms: ambition, greed, vanity. But the root was always the same: the desire to rise without God. Cain rose against Abel. Towers rose against heaven. Empires rose against love. Each act of defiance carried the memory of Lucifer's voice. You can be your own God. And still, heaven waited. He watched, grieved, and intervened through prophets and storms, floods and covenants, always calling his children back. Every act of rebellion throughout history is a reflection of that first cosmic war. Not just ancient myth, but living pattern. When we betray, when we seek power at the cost of peace, we reenact the same rebellion that broke heaven. But when we forgive, when we humble ourselves, when we choose love over pride, we bring heaven back into the world. That's why the Bible is not just a record of rules, but a mirror for the soul. Genesis 1 and 2. Those two creation stories are not contradictions. They are layers of meaning. The first speaks of restoration of the world, the second of restoration of the heart. In the first, God speaks and light appears. In the second, God breathes and life begins. One heals the cosmos, the other heals the soul. You see, there is no separation between cosmic creation and personal redemption. The same God who turned chaos into order in the beginning is still doing it inside you. Every time your life falls apart and you rise again, you are living Genesis all over. Have you ever felt like your world became formless and void? Maybe your plans shattered, your faith wavered, or your heart was broken. That's not the end. That's the moment God begins to speak light again. The darkness you fear may only be the soil where creation starts anew. When he said, "Let there be light," he wasn't only commanding photons into existence, he was speaking healing into the void. The same voice still whispers through your chaos today. Let there be light in you. So don't despise the darkness. It's often the place where divine purpose is reborn. As centuries unfolded, the human story carried the tension between rebellion and redemption. Prophets rose to remind us that the war was not over. The battlefield had moved from heaven's courts to human hearts. Every day, each of us stands between two voices. One whispers like the serpent, "Take, it's yours. You deserve more." The other speaks like the Creator, "Wait, trust me. I am enough." The first voice promises freedom but leads to chains. The second voice asks for surrender but gives peace. And maybe that's the deepest truth of all. Heaven's war was never just about power. It was about trust. Lucifer stopped trusting that God's love was enough. Adam stopped trusting that God's word was true. Every war, every sin, every broken relationship comes down to that same loss of trust. But faith, real faith, restores what pride destroys. When you forgive someone who hurt you, you're siding with heaven. When you choose humility over ego, you're silencing the serpent. When you love someone unworthy, you're participating in redemption itself. Because the war that began in heaven is not won by force, it's won by hearts that return to light. Think of your own story. Think of the times you fell, rebelled, or turned away. Yet something may be quiet, may be fierce, kept calling you back. That's the voice that spoke light over the deep. That's God, still at war for your soul, still believing in what he made. And so we return to the hidden connection, the mystery between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. The world was created twice, not because God made a mistake, but because he wanted us to understand. Creation is ongoing. It's not a one-time act. It's a process. In Genesis 1, God creates light before the sun. In Genesis 2, he creates man before the rain. Both are paradoxes, reminders that divine order doesn't follow human logic. God moves in mysteries, shaping what seems impossible into something beautiful. And so he still does in you. Every time you forgive, you recreate Eden. Every time you choose kindness in anger, you restore a corner of heaven. Every time you rise after failure, you echo the voice that said, "Let there be light." Maybe that's why pain exists, to remind us that redemption is still alive. The scars of heaven's first war are still visible, but they no longer define the story. The cross, centuries later, became the bridge between heaven and earth, between the rebellion and the return. God didn't erase history, he rewrote it with love. The war began with pride, but it ends with surrender. The serpent's whisper was, "Take." Christ's answer was, "Give." That's the final healing, when we stop fighting to be like God and start reflecting him instead. So perhaps the hidden truth of creation is this: everything broken exists to reveal something beautiful. Every fall exists to show the depth of grace. Every exile exists so the return can be sweeter. And as you listen now, think about your own garden, the place where you first fell, the place you long to restore. God hasn't closed the gate. He's waiting by it. The flaming sword is not to keep you out, but to burn away everything that cannot enter whole. Maybe the real Eden is not a lost place, but a promised state of heart, a return to innocence, not ignorance, a restoration of trust. The war that began before Adam will end, not when angels triumph, but when humanity finally learns to love like heaven again. If these words touch your heart, share what they mean to you below. Do you believe the garden was lost, or simply waiting to be rediscovered within us? Your story might help another soul remember that even after the fall, light always finds a way home. The story that began before Adam now rests in your hands. From the silence of heaven's first rebellion to the whisper of grace that still echoes through every human heart, all of it was written so that love could be understood, not as a feeling, but as a force that survives every fall. Before time began, there was light. That light was not a sun, nor a star, but a presence, a warmth that breathed life into all things. And even when the first betrayal cracked heaven's song, that light did not fade. It simply hid inside creation, waiting to be found again, waiting inside you. We often think the war in heaven was about power, but perhaps it was always about love misunderstood. Lucifer fell because he wanted to be love instead of receiving it. Humanity fell for the same reason, longing to take what could only be given. Yet even through failure, God never turned away. He kept speaking light over chaos, order over confusion, forgiveness over shame. Maybe that's what makes the story of Before Adam Fell so beautiful. It's not just about angels and creation. It's about the part of heaven that still lives within us, that quiet, holy place, where light keeps trying to bloom through the cracks of a broken heart. If you listen closely, you can still hear it. The same voice that called the stars into being still calls you by name. The same hands that shaped the galaxies still long to hold the dust that you are. You were never a mistake, never a fragment of a forgotten war. You were always part of the plan to heal what was broken before time began. So when life feels heavy, when the world feels dark, or when you fall again into your own garden of regret, remember, darkness is not the end. It is the backdrop against which light becomes visible. The same way God restored the world after the war in heaven, he can restore the world inside you. Let his words be the dawn that rises over your despair. Let his promises be the gentle rain that softens the soil of your pain. Because every scar, every failure, every moment you thought was the end, is simply the place where grace begins to write again. In love, there is no wasted story. Every tear has meaning. Every silence holds a song. Every loss hides a seed of something that will bloom when the time is right. And perhaps that is the final mystery, that even the fall was part of the journey home. Heaven is not far. It is as close as your next act of kindness, your next breath of surrender, your next whispered prayer. It is the warmth that returns when you forgive, the peace that comes when you stop running. Heaven is not only where you go, it is what you become when love wins inside you. So tonight, or whenever your heart feels tired, close your eyes and remember this truth. Before Adam fell, heaven was already fighting for you, and it still is. You are part of an ancient story, one written in light, restored through grace, and sealed with love. You are the reason the morning still breaks, the reason mercy still flows, the reason God still whispers through the quiet, "You are mine." Let that truth heal you. Let it fill the empty spaces of your soul with warmth, as if sunlight itself has chosen to live inside your chest. And if these words brought light to your soul in a dark moment, if they reminded you of who you truly are, loved, chosen, and worth every battle heaven ever fought, then I invite you to share a little of your energy, your support, your presence, so that I can continue creating these stories that bring hope and healing to others. Every gesture, every comment, every small act of love is a thread in this great tapestry of grace. Tell me, what part of this story touched you most? Do you believe heaven's war still echoes inside our choices today, or that love has already won long ago? I would be honored to read your thoughts in the comments below. And if this message spoke to your heart, I gently ask you to like, share, and subscribe, not as a ritual, but as a way of saying, "Yes, let there be light again." Each time you do, the message travels further, touching hearts that might still be wandering in the dark. Thank you, beloved soul, for walking this path with me, from the fall of angels to the rise of grace. Thank you for letting your heart listen, for allowing the ancient story to breathe through you once more. May the same light that began before creation wrap around you tonight like a soft cloak. May peace rest upon your thoughts. May your heart remember that even in the ruins, beauty grows again, and may your spirit rise gentle, unafraid, eternal, knowing that love has already won.